Hi, Kamila and Nika. Day 3, here we are. In addition to being an artist, one of the many things that I do is I coach survivors of sexual abuse and assault. And I do this because I'm not certified, I do it for free, but I feel like I have something to offer in also being a survivor, but someone who no longer identifies as one because I no longer feel like I'm surviving something. And it's incredibly liberating, and I really want to be able to help other survivors get to this point so that they're living a life of thriving and kind of creating your own path. So I decided to start doing that. So today, one of the people that I coach, she was we were talking, this is a topic we've talked about in the past, and I think I've even vlogged about it before in my meditation series that I did a couple of years ago. But one of the things we talked about, and I think it's really important to bring up, is why do survivors sometimes never leave their abuser or abusive environments, or why does it take them so long to do so? When we got in this conversation, I just kept thinking about it, and I was like, I feel like my situation was so unique in that I was 18. I was living in, under my parents' roof, and it was incredibly toxic and not healthy and abusive, and I knew I needed to get out, but I didn't know how to do that. And one of the things that we experience as survivors is often you're hearing things like, there's just little like seeds planted to make you doubt yourself. Like I remember hearing, you'll end up on the streets type of thing, or like, and I also recognized that I didn't know anything about how to control my own finances and how to survive out in the real world at all. And that was obviously intentional, and that's often the case with people, is that their abuser is controlling their money or telling them that they will never make it, and they create the outside world as being almost more scary than what your current environment is that you already know. And it's like you can be going through hell, but when the unknown is the unknown, and you don't know, and what's out there, it can potentially be even more overwhelming than what your abusive and toxic circumstances are. So we were just talking about this, and so with my situation, I was working for a family, a wonderful family, and they found me this therapist who told me if I don't leave, well, my parents were out of town, and I was working for them, and the therapist said, if you don't leave now, you will never leave. And it terrified me because he was right, and I knew he was right. I knew that my fear of the outside world was so great, and what I was being fed was so powerful, that there would be no way that I would leave the situation while my parents were around. So I had to like figure out how to get myself out while they were gone. So while they were on vacation, I had a game plan. We had arranged for me to move in with this family, and then after, while I was basically moving all my stuff out, I also wrote a letter and had witnesses there when my parents returned, and so that, with retaliation of any kind, it could be, I had people to witness that in case, but I handled it really well. I basically said, we haven't been getting along. I kind of put it on me, and I just, it was like, when I think back about how mature this was as an 18-year-old, I just said, this is ruining our relationship. And in order for us to have a relationship at all, I think it's really important for me to, move out at this time. And, I just kind of handled it really well and left it so that you really couldn't argue with what I was saying, or left it in a way that was like, you could tell, like I was saying, like I cared about maintaining any kind of relationship, but in order to do that, I was reiterating how important it was for me to actually leave the situation, leave the house. And I had a couple loved ones there to like support me through that, so they could also just to get like I said, make sure that everything remained as calm and cool as possible. And then that was it. No one could argue with it. And then I got out. When I was talking to this girl that I coach, we were just, reiterating the fact that most survivors don't get that opportunity. I was very, very fortunate to have a family that was, an additional family, and people who were really supportive and even offered me to live with them, for one. And it just made me think, and even in her situation, we're working on really setting the boundary and trying to maintain her autonomy and finding more and more opportunities to create her, to be able to get herself out. And it's really difficult. And I really, really empathize with it, because, she's being fed like this information that she's not in control of her own life, and that she's basically not going to make it. It's their narrative, but for specific reasons, which I think are just to keep that control. So I just thought it was important to bring this subject to light, because I know that it's like my situation was unique, but it's also not unique. Like, I recognize that I was very fortunate in being able to get out when I did, and I also recognize that that's not everyone else's situations. And but again, which is why I think it's so important for people to have an awareness around this, because when you never know if someone's like talking and they're trying to get out of a situation, just knowing that there's potential options for them to slowly get out or get their independence. It's one of these things that I really, really, it weighs heavy on my heart. And I think we really need to bring more conversation around that. So if you can imagine, for someone to even get to the point where they go to a shelter is a really, really big deal. This is something I just thought I'd mention. I would love to, if people have any comments or have stories, I would really love to talk about it, and even go as far as touching on this more. So if you'd like more videos like this or more conversation around this, then please, by all means, comment, and I would love to chat with you. All right, so bye.